I'm Ben,
I'm Josh.
and the film we've chosen to speak about is Green Street. Green Street is a hooligan film which we'll go through in the presentation. It links to hooliganism, which we'll learn about in our module, and that's why we've chosen the film.
So this is what the structure of the presentation is going to be like. I'm going to give a brief intro and overview of the film, talk about hooliganism, the history of hooliganism, examples of it, football firms and how the media affects firms, how everything links to the film, and how football fans and firms differentiate. So, quick intro. Green Street is about a group of British football hooligans who support West Ham. It's directed by Lexi Alexander and stars Elijah Wood and Charlie Hunnam. The film starts by showing us the main character, Matt, being expelled from Harvard. He was studying journalism, and he was thrown out. He was expelled for a crime he did not commit. He took the blame for his flatmate. Therefore, he had to come back to the UK to visit his sister. When he got back to the UK, he met his sister's boyfriend, who was the old major of one of the biggest firms in England, the GSE, which is a West Ham firm. He then ventured out with the new sort of GCSE member and went to his first West Ham game, and then afterwards,
Afterwards, he got into the culture of the firm and kept going to more games. Later on in the film, Pete, who is the new major, or the leader of the firm, which is Matt's sister's boyfriend's brother, Pete's right-hand man, Bobber, who is a big part of the firm, the GSE. Later on in the film, we find Bobber clocks that Matt is a journalist, or had been studying journalist, which then causes friction between the group and Pete himself, because he's the one who introduced Matt. They turn on Pete and Matt and question Matt's skills and the reasons why he's in the firm. Later on due to this, Bobber goes to meet Tommy Hatcher. Tommy Hatcher is the leader of Millwall's firm, who are West Ham's biggest rivals, and tells him about what Matt has been up to being a journalist. He then gives him inside information about the firm, including that about Matt and where Steve is, the former major, which then leads to trouble because Tommy blames Steve, the former major, for the death of his son, which happened during a fight between the two teams years ago. Due to this, Tommy then and the rest of his firm go and meet West Ham in a pub, which leads to Tommy stabbing Steve, leaving him in a critical condition. Because of this, Matt's sister Shannon, who is Steve's wife, then decides to leave the country and go back to America with Matt. As part to finish it all off, Pete, who's now Steve's brother, organises a straightener between the two firms and the two clubs, which takes place, and this is whilst Matt is on his way back to the airport to go back to America. Matt then escapes from his sister to go and take part in the fight, which leads to Shannon following him to try and get him out of the fight and defend him. As Tommy sees this as an option or an opportunity to get revenge on Steve fully by killing his family, Pete then distracts Tommy to protect Shannon and the family. So whilst they get away, Tommy then turns his attention to Pete and beats him to death, which then Tommy sees as revenge for his son's death. The definition of hooliganism is violent or rowdy behaviour by young troublemakers, typically in a gang. Football hooliganism is a culture which most teams take part in, whatever the level, whatever country. It can happen within and outside stadiums. An example in a lower form would be chanting and taunting opposition fans inside the stadium. But mostly football firms and hooligans go to fight after the game outside the stadium with the opposition for organised fights. As the film demonstrates, the culture of hooliganism and football hooliganism tends to be white, lower class English men. These people who are hooligans only fight with people within the specific groups. They don't target other people that don't want to be targeted.
So a little bit about the history of hooliganism. Football and violence go way back, at least 7 centuries. In fact, in 1314, for instance, Edward II banned football. At that stage, a nasty free-for-all involving rival villages, fly hacking a pig's bladder across the local heath, because unrest or possibility, even treason. Hooliganism will always play a part in football. However, it has dramatically declined as a culture, and now may just be seen as a recreational, fun aspect that people do on a weekend just to blow off a bit of steam. Another reason is police are more engaged now in stopping the trouble. There's nowhere to find the fights. They know which places to put more police, add more staff. Also, football has also become more of a high-class sport. It's quite expensive to attend most football games in the Football League, especially the Premier League and the Championship. It has grown to be quite an expensive hobby, quotes Oliver. Even playing it now, you've got to buy the equipment, which is very expensive. A pair of football boots, the cheapest one you can get really is like £30 these days.
An example of hooliganism, especially in football, is of an extreme. It's the Heysel disaster. The Heysel disaster took place at Heysel Stadium in Brussels in Belgium on the 29th of May 1985. It was the day of the European Cup final for that year, which took place between Liverpool and Juventus. In the stands, there was trouble between the two sets of fans, which led to Liverpool fans storming the gates and the neutral section to try and get more fans to the Juventus section. Whilst they were doing this, it caused a crush, which then led to 39 people dying and 600 people being injured. Both clubs tried to blame each other for what happened, but ultimately it was Liverpool and England as a whole who suffered from it, as UEFA banned English clubs from playing in Europe and travelling in Europe because of the disaster. A more recent example and a lower form of hooliganism is last week on the 29th of November. Crystal Palace and Brighton and Hove Albion played at Brighton's Amex Stadium. They are South Coast rivals, and because they've not been in the same league for a few years, they've got a big rivalry, and this match was eagerly anticipated. What happened was, as Palace fans arrived at the stadium, many fans without tickets showing up, and then stormed the gates of the stadium and got into the ground. This led to clashes with stewards and police, which led to 2 stewards being injured and 6 people being arrested. But also, innocent football fans with tickets then got escorted out of the city without even seeing a ball being kicked, so they didn't get to watch the game. It was described as a return to the dark days of football, which shows that this culture has died off, and it used to be worse. But however, a few instances and incidents make it return to that culture.
So a little bit about firms. A football firm is often the term given to a group of football hooligans who are travelling together, often to engage in violence with the other team's firm. Football teams are often have firm within their team name. or their name of the firm. For example, West Ham has an ICF as well, which is the inner city firm.
The media are known to be responsible for the reputation of football firms. They have a weird relationship, football firms and the media, because they want their fights to be publicised so that the reputation gets bigger. So that can work in a good way. So if they have a good fight, the reputation gets higher as it's been reported on. But also it can work in a bad way, because if they have a fight and they lose, or they're not as good, it can be reported that they haven't done as well, which can damage their reputation. But where football firms want the media to report on their fights, they don't want inside knowledge, and especially secretive knowledge, to take place. Because if the media names like members of the firm, especially like surnames and names, it can get back to the police, which can lead to prosecution such as stadium bans, prison sentences or fines. That can then lead to the firm not being able to take place and the reputation going down, and eventually it could close down and not run anymore.
Journalists are not allowed anywhere near the firms. The firms are doing crimes. They're risking their freedom technically, because when they're going out, the crimes they're committing are bad crimes, and if they were to be published, like Ben said, with their surnames, they could eventually be prosecuted and lose members of the team due to them being put in prison. Throughout the film, they have a saying, it's no journos and no Yanks. The reason behind no Yanks, technically meaning Americans, could be to do with in America their main sports are basketball, baseball, and they don't really know much about soccer, which, I mean, they don't even call it the right word over here. It's football to us. So this is maybe why they're sort of seen as outsiders, because they can't really be trusted to have your back as well. They don't really know what it's like to take one for your team. Groups are secluded and secretive, therefore nobody knows their business. This is why Bother, the right-hand man in the film, is wrong when he meets Millwall, as he's giving out inside knowledge on the firm and letting rivals on their secrets and business, which is highly not allowed between firms.
Firms and football fans in general are different. Firms are different because football can then be secondary to the fighting can be secondary to the football, so they'll turn up and just be there for a fight really. Whereas usual football fans are the football fans that would wear a scarf, club colours, hats, that'd be easily recognisable. They don't want any trouble. They're mostly families. So football firms often have like an unofficial uniform, which can be like Adidas trainers, jeans, and stole iron jackets and like makes like that. This means they can be easily recognised. This can be good and bad because it means they don't interact with the real football fans when they're looking for trouble, and they can easily be identified when trouble is taking place. Therefore, no innocent people get involved with it and get hurt by it. Many of the firms have a similar age range, which is men. A similar age range and the culture, which men, white, English, which can be seen in the film as many of the people are of that bracket.
So we've got 5 questions to think about here. Can you name any other examples of football hooliganism and explain what happened? Have you ever witnessed football hooliganism whilst visiting a stadium? Are you nervous that you will get caught up in hooliganism whilst watching a game? Which clubs and firms have you heard of? Do you think the culture of hooliganism will ever be eradicated, and explain why?
And these are our references.